Life is a quest for logic and reason. It is a quest to find balance between science and faith. Life is a quest for knowledge and understanding. But most importantly, it's a quest for personal discovery. Whatever your quest, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Welcome to Quest. Hi, Edyta. Welcome back to the Quest podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me back.
Well, it seems weird to invite you to this show since we've just done a whole season of your show and I see you all the time. But here you are back again. You haven't been on my Quest podcast in a couple of seasons, but I'm glad to have you back and to chat today.
Yeah, no, it's your sound, your voice is so familiar, your face is so familiar. So hopefully this will be just like any other conversation we have.
Yeah, well, when you came on the show before, it was really kind of the beginning of our friendship. Like we really had a great interview and we stayed in touch and we put together a project of our own. And it was nice. It's nice to have you back because I'm heading toward 100 episodes. So I'm down to like the final 7 before I hit that. So I've wanted to bring back guests that were great interviews before. But not only, can we pick up where we left off, but we're going to talk about your podcast you host that I produce called Danceology. Normally, I have the hosts on before we launch the podcast so that some of my audience can go over and listen to it. We didn't have time to do that this year. So we're actually doing your interview about this after the first season is over. We did a whole season.
Right. We didn't have time for that. It kind of happened really quickly, which I'm very happy about because I think great things happen in the right time. And I think it was the right time for me and perhaps for you. And it just happened. And yeah, we didn't have time for the pre-interview.
We didn't. So we've done 12 episodes. We did a 12 episode first season. We have 2 interviews that are special episodes that come out in the summer. And then we'll be back in the fall for season 2. So let's talk about sort of the genesis of this project. I know I'm responsible. I've been prodding you to kind of come out of your exile, your retirement that you've been in, raising your kids, and like the public wants to see you come back. Let's do something. We've talked about a book. We talked about a podcast. We talked about all these different things. What did you first think when I kind of proposed these things to you?
I just thought, why not? It just was so right in my alley and right for the time and for the mental space that I was in, that it was kind of a non-brainer. Like I didn't even have a doubt in my mind about it. I was kind of like, well, why didn't I think about it myself? And I think I've noticed that very often in the past as well. I think I have this kind of personality that I am quite motivated and but I need a little nudge, if you know what I mean. So once I start doing something, I can find that work ethic and motivation within me and all that. But that little beginning nudge, I think maybe it stems from a bit of a lack of confidence in certain areas, right? Maybe it stems from, lack of belief that it's possible that I will find time and opportunity. So once I get that little nudge, it becomes possible in my mind. And when it becomes possible in my mind, it just happens. So I hope the same thing will happen with a book that I started working on. But life is busy. Life is just so busy. It's, and I like to do things 100%. I like to put, effort into it, and I want to make it the best I can make it, which sometimes is a drawback because it stretches out the time. So the projects that I'm creating, I am not satisfied with them until I really tweaked every single detail of it. Sometimes I wish I could let go of certain things and move on and release the project in whatever shape it is, because it might be already good enough. But no, in my mind, there's always something to tweak.
Of course. And a podcast is very manageable because you can do it from your home. You can do it in your pajamas. This is a fairly easy thing to put together. And
Well,
you turned out to be a great host because I think that was our biggest concern was could you handle being a host? And you were also very self-conscious about your accent and whether you would,
sure.
yeah. But everyone loved it. And I feel like it's a good fan service because after you left Dancing with the Stars and, you did some shows and things like that. But once you got into just raising your family, like you sort of vanished from the public eye. And the fans have been so receptive to have you come back. And you sort of, before your podcast launch, you did an interview on Cheryl Burke's podcast. And that was kind of like the first time people have heard you in a while. And we saw the response to that and we knew we were onto something. And when we started teasing this show, we started to get a lot of positive response, people anxious to hear what you had to say. And we sort of structured this a little different than what other people do. I was really adamant about, I don't want this to be all ballroom. Like I want Danceology to be like all styles of dance. And we went back and forth on that a lot. So we have about half the season is our ballroom professionals, and half of it are people from other styles. How did you feel about that when the season was over? Did you like interviewing people from other styles? Like, was this the way to go with this podcast? Was that the right move? Did you like what you learned from them?
I'll tell you this: interviewing people from the ballroom world is a bit of cheating. It's easy. It's easy for me because I can connect
Sure.
to these people very easily. We have similar experiences and we speak the same language. But I learned the most from the people that are outside of ballroom. I learned the most from people like Dave Scott, who has had completely. He's a street dancer and a choreographer. He choreographed Step Up and You Got Served. His experience was so entirely different and far, far removed from anything familiar to me that it was just fascinating for me to listen to his stories and how he grew up. And then people like Paulina Edmonds, the Olympic ice skater, her story was fascinating too. And the reflection on her career and things that some of the things that she, looking back, thinks about her training and her career stuck in my mind. So I think it's a great mix. I would actually love to move even more out of the ballroom world just because maybe my listeners would not be that happy about it. So I need to keep a good balance because I know that my listeners are, probably mostly interested in, since they are my fans, they are probably fans of ballroom dancing. But I think it would be, if we're talking about that quest for knowledge or the learning opportunity, I think that would be ideal for me to expand in even to not even only other dance styles, but different disciplines, different sports disciplines, gymnasts, soccer players, volleyball players. Right now we are at Wimbledon. I would love to interview a tennis player. I think whatever goes into becoming successful in doing something, it's very translatable to other disciplines. So whatever makes a dancer successful, whether it's a street dancer, ballroom dancer, contemporary or ballet, I think that those elements translate into other disciplines. And I would like to discover these stories of these people that truly succeeded in these
Yeah.
sport or art forms, or even anything in life.
Yeah, yeah, and we're already putting together our guest list for season 2, and some of these people that Edyta is talking about, we may have people of, these other worlds that join our show. Paulina, just using her as an example, I wanted to talk about maybe some takeaways from some of these interviews, things that we were surprised to hear, and dance was really important to Paulina, and she talks about how expressive she is on the ice and how dance really influenced that. and just recreationally, she's always taking dance classes. She was in LA not too long ago and took a heels class just to be able to take one. And so it's interesting to always see the influence of these things and how the lines get blurred between things. We see this in hip hop a lot. There's always this joke about hip hop, about if you boil hip hop down to its bare elements, there's nothing there. It's all just things taken from other places. And it's like that in the music and in the dance. It's hip hop's really interesting that way, what it borrowed from. And
Right.
so it's always interesting to see who these choreographers can work with, what they're capable of choreographing, and what their particular things are. Dave Scott, I don't remember if he said this in the interview, but he's told me this before. We've talked about this. One of our favorite movies. This is hilarious because when you see Dave, I mean, he's from the inner city. He's a tough guy. Like he looks like he could kick some butt. Our favorite movie is Xanadu with Olivia Newton-John.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Xanadu, the musical Xanadu. That came. So it was Olivia Newton-John movie. It was all. I mean, it's a dance movie.
Well, I'll have to watch it now. I don't think I've seen it. Okay.
And we were joking one day about like our childhood movies, and we were sharing a story about how Dave and I are close in age, so we grew up with all the best dance movies. We had Footloose, we had Grease, we had Urban Cowboy, we had Breakin', we had they were Saturday Night Fever. Like we had all those in our adolescent years that influenced us, right? And I go, what was one of your favorite ones from that period of time? And he goes, it was Xanadu. I go, no kidding. I'm like, me too. It was like, because we loved Olivia Newton-John. We loved all our movies. And Xanadu was actually made into a Broadway show. And I just thought, wow, I never in a million years would have thought Dave would have said Xanadu, which didn't do well in the box office, but became a cult favorite. And it was amazing.
I do have to watch it now.
But see, that was Gene Kelly's last movie that he did. So he's in that movie with her. He has these incredible dance numbers with Olivia Newton-John. They have dancers on skates. They have dancers tapped. They have every style of dance there is in that movie. It's quite phenomenal to watch it. And Olivia Newton-John plays a Greek goddess who comes to Earth to influence people. Is what she is in it. So.
All right.
Anyways.
Well, it sounds like maybe as a movie, it wasn't appealing to the general audience, but became a cult movie because, as you mentioned, there are so many dance styles and probably incredible dance numbers there.
Yeah. Well, you can tell it was a very big budget movie when it was made, and then it underperformed at the box office. And it was after Olivia had done Grease and some of her popular things, and it didn't do well for her. But anyways, so for my listeners, that's not my all-time favorite movie, but one of my favorite dance movies. I just want to, because I'm going to get email about that. Xanadu's your favorite movie? So let's talk about some of the other takeaways here. I want to mention Fergus. I was really surprised. Fergus Fitzpatrick is the male lead in Riverdance, and we really enjoyed his interview. And I was shocked to hear him say that they learn all the spots and they rotate on stage. That was incredible. I had no idea.
That is quite remarkable. And, just you can just imagine the amount of work that they put in to actually learn that choreography. It's not only you learning your numbers, but you're learning everyone else's number. You learning the whole show. Just so the audience understands, in the tour, in Dancing with the Stars tour, I was probably participating in about, I would say, 10 to 12 numbers, which is a lot. Some of my quick changes, I was even laughing about it with my kids the other day, were under 30 seconds. And they were like, Mom, there's no way you can change a costume in 30 seconds. And there is a way. And 30 seconds is actually quite a lot of time, if you think about it. And we had everything aligned. And so 10 to 12 numbers. And to be honest with you, I had moments on the stage when I would sometimes blank out and I would be like, okay, where am I? What am I doing? And, which number is it? So for Fergus to actually know the whole choreography and be able to step in at any moment was quite remarkable. And yes, he was very sweet. He was incredibly humble and charming. And it was a great surprise for me to hear how gracious he was in the whole interview. But yes, that was a great learning opportunity for me too, because you know, to be honest with you, Irish dancing is quite far removed from what I do.
Hmm.
Uh, it's a bit of a line dancing, and you most of the time, well, you dance with a partner, but I guess most of the time it's a solo, and it's very much upper body limited, and the feet and stuck out a bit like tapping. So so completely different story. And I would imagine that their rhythms and the intricacy of their timing is even more complex than what I do. So yes, I mean, hats down for Fergus and the whole cast of Riverdance for doing that.
Yeah, for sure. And also, you mentioned a lot of the line there, but also it's the tap components of it, the point components of it.
Right.
All the Amy Mae Dolan, who leads that show, she does some TikTok videos that show her quick changes and how she'll come off stage, get her water, have this routine, change, and you hear everything going on in the background before she has to come back out on the other side of the stage. And it's really fun to watch the behind the scenes of that show, and of course partner dancing in that too. So there it gets a lot of elements in that show. It's fascinating. You got to, in this first season, you got to kind of reconnect with your old friend Samantha Harris. How did you feel about that? That was fun to have her on the show and kind of tell her journey of how she got on Dancing with the Stars and what happened afterward.
Right. Yeah, well, Samantha also kind of disappeared from the face of the earth for a while. Unfortunately, she was diagnosed with cancer. She's been cancer free for 10 years now. But I actually had no idea about her story until I came across one of her social media posts. Uh, Amanda has always been great. I've been saying many times that I think she was one of the best, if not the best, co-host for Dancing with the Stars, because she had that combination of glamour and wits and great energy. She was even joking that she looked like one of the dancers. She was so fit and tan
Yeah,
and glamorous. I think she was fabulous. I'm not sure why she was replaced. It might be just the television cycle of the need for change for the show
sure.
that has been around for many seasons. So it was great to reconnect. Um, Samantha is a chatterbox too, so it's easy. It was easy to talk to her, and I love the experience that she shared and the knowledge that she shared because, it is true. So one of the things that she shared that I found really fascinating is that she said, "I've been living such a healthy life. I've been a health freak, eating healthy and exercising, and yet I got diagnosed with cancer, and I wanted to understand why." So she did a bit of a research, and she realized that there's only about 10% of cancer cases that can be accounted to genetic inherited problems. But the rest of it, we don't know where it comes from. And she believes it's from the food and from the products from the toxins that we put in our body. And I think that's really important to talk about it. I have kids. I obviously want them to grow up healthy and have a long, healthy life. And I think this is something that the new generation is going to be dealing more so than even my generation, because the amount of chemicals in products increases,
Yeah.
even though the trend is right now for the clean products. But in general, I think the food can also almost become a
It,
poison right now
it
if you don't really
yeah.
watch what you're eating.
Also environmental. It's not just necessarily the food, or the junk people eat, which is bad, but it's also the environment. We've heavily polluted. We've turned the earth into our dumping ground, and that is in everything. Mercury is in our fish. Like
Plastic and
there's
mercury.
microplastics are in our bodies. Like
Yeah.
plastic was the wave of the future in the '60s, and now we're
Weaving
trying
away
to
from it.
addressing that problem. And so environmentally, there is radiation, there's pollutions, there's just so much that's bad out there. Yeah, so it could. Now, Editor, you like the sun, don't you? Aren't you a sun worshiper?
Yeah, it is probably it's terrible. I can. It's not that I like it. I like active lifestyle.
Hmm.
So I guess I was lucky growing up in Poland because it was only sunny for about 2 months of the year. We didn't get exposed too much. And growing up in 80s, 90s, no one talked about sunscreen yet.
Yeah.
So I don't remember my mom smearing any sunscreen on me like I do on my kids now
Yeah.
every 2 hours. So that I just like active lifestyle. And, like if you see my kids, uh, I cover them with sunscreen. They are just as tan as I am. I put sunscreen on too. It's just being outdoors, just being in
Sure.
the water. I think there is a balance to everything. I want to protect my children from any possible diseases, but also, it's so important for them to be outdoors, to enjoy the adventures
Sure.
outdoors. And uh, there's not much I can do other than smear that sunscreen on them.
You know,
uh,
the sunscreen that was around when I was a boy was the kind that later they found out was like a terrible kind to put on you.
it
You
was
know,
a
it was just
terrible, right, that would create chemicals in your skin, right? Well, it still exists, by the way. There are still
yeah,
many companies that make the sunscreens that when it will protect you from the sun, but with the contact with the sun, it starts producing harmful chemicals. So it's just like,
yeah,
what's
sure.
going on here?
I take my chances with the sun. I don't really protect myself much, and I should. I've had some skin cancers, and
Well,
I should probably take care of myself more. But I do enjoy the sun.
but you also can't forget about all the benefits that the sun provides. It's the vitamin D, it's the energy. We wouldn't have life on Earth without sun. So I always believed in balance and kind of
For,
moderation. But
for Dancing with the Stars, did you use tanning beds or self tanners, or what? What was your process for being so bronze on
gosh, we used
stage?
we used everything. We used everything, and that's actually, I think, that did more damage to my skin than the actual sun. We were so obsessed with being tan that we did spray tans, we did self tanners, we did body makeup on top that gave
Mm.
you a little tint and a shimmer. And we would go to tanning beds in the winter months too. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I'm looking back at it and I can't believe I've been doing it. It wasn't for too long though, because it was right around that time that people really started bringing awareness of how harmful they are. I don't think those tanning salons still exist. Do they? Have you ever? There were a
There's
ton of them in every city. Do they still
there's
exist?
no there's still yeah there's still
Still
tanning salons
there?
everywhere. So they're
Gosh.
they're all over. The Planet Fitness has tanning beds, stand up tanning beds. Planet Fitness, the biggest gym in the country, has got tanning beds. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm
Wow.
curious. I'm curious though. You know, I don't know much about the wipe on self tanners. Are those bad for
Mm.
you? Like what's theirs isn't natural self tanner. I can't imagine anything that dyes your skin is healthy for you.
Well, I don't really know the exact science behind it, but basically, they are definitely less harmful than the actual sun.
Mm,
And nowadays, they are self-tanners with organic ingredients, clean ingredients.
mm,
And I don't think that bringing out the pigmentation from the skin it's harmful for you. It's just that in the past, those spray tans had a lot of chemicals,
hmm
like chemicals that we don't really know. Here's another thing that people don't know. I'm going to switch a little bit as I'm talking about it. There's a ton of cosmetics out there. People can literally go out and create a cream and sell it without any testing, without
Yep.
any clinical uh, testing or approval. You just put a bunch of stuff in a cream and package it and sell it. That's exactly how it's done.
hmm
And then the big companies do some testing because they want to have something to back up their products with. But do they test, how effective they are? Do they test the side effects? Not at all. These are not FDA approved products.
Yeah.
So it's literally up to your discretion to check the ingredients and you know, to find out for yourself. It's very complicated. It's very overwhelming. We talked about it with Samantha a little bit, but going back to sunscreen, to self tanning stuff, this stuff washes off, right? So it doesn't really go deep into your skin. It's
Mm.
kind of brings out the pigment from your skin and washes off in a week or two. And I think the products right now are a lot cleaner. So I think you can find a good self tanner that is not going to
We,
cause harm.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I'm interested in doing that. But I've always been curious about it because I have always have a pale face, and I just, maybe I'll use self tanners, and I think,
I
I don't
don't know.
really.
Then you're gonna look like the politicians nowadays. Both of them, by the way.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah, we were talking before we started recording the episode about we were talking about Game of Thrones and Walking Dead and stuff like that. Well, you'd mentioned your husband watched Walking Dead. Well, I was in Walking Dead, and I
Oh,
remember,
you were
yeah, yeah, in what
as an actor,
season
producer?
8, 9. Oh, I was in it as an actor, and I was
Oh,
one of
that's
the
awesome.
I was one of the saviors on the show, whatever seasons those were, 9 or 10 or something like that, 8, 9, 10,
Uh-huh.
somewhere back then. But they would, everyone in that show's dirty. So every day I would have to spend an hour in the makeup chair and they would have to make me dirty. And it was
Dirty,
like a
right.
multi-step process. And it's not just like rubbing dirt on your face.
Yeah,
Like
no,
it's a
dirt
makeup process, right?
accumulates. Right, yes.
But
That's
they
hilarious.
had this stuff in a spray bottle that I swear was just watered down black spray paint, and they would spray it on me, and it was so gummy, and they would like force it into your nail beds and deep into your ears, like they wanted the dirt crusted in you. Like, and if you had a
Right. As
wrinkle,
if
it
you
needed to,
were.
you
Right.
had to look dirty like constantly, and it had to stay on. You couldn't sweat it off. And the only way you could take the stuff off was to use like shaving cream. You had to use, when I went home, I'd go home in full makeup. You had to use shaving cream, and that was the only thing you could put on you, and it would come off. Like soap wouldn't even take it off.
Wow.
But for whatever reason, shaving cream would take it all off. So I'd have to take a shower in shaving cream to get all this junk off all my arms. It's crazy. Anyways, I often wonder how hazardous that was to my health in the year I worked on
You know
that
what?
show.
Yeah, well, Samantha talks about it too. I mean, think about all the hairspray that I've been sitting in a room, full of other girls getting their hair done, and it was the gel, the hairspray spraying on, the spray tan, all these products. I bet you, movie sets are full of these chemicals, and I think Samantha even mentioned that she was on the show and she talked about having a set like chemical free. I don't know how possible that is, but I think that's going to be the future eventually. Uh, Hopefully, we'll come to the point where you can get dirty. Maybe they'll like roll you on the ground. I don't know, in the
Well,
forest before you go
in
on a
in
set.
the future,
Have
it's
you
only
lived?
going to be it's going to be
Have
AI.
you?
It's going to be digital people. You can do whatever you want to
There you
them.
go. There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Let's move on. We had Benji Schwimmer on the show, and
Hmm.
man, that guy has a great personality. I really
Yes.
enjoyed talking to him. We had a lot of technical problems that day. I think your power went out, and then there was like, so got to talk to him for like 15 or 20 minutes before we started the show because we were waiting for you to get back on.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
man, that guy was just like so fun. Like if there was anyone
Yeah.
from this show I really 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 want to have more conversations with, it was
With
Benji.
Benji.
And he told a great story about working for Tarantino. What'd you think about his Tarantino story for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Oh, it was
Oh,
amazing how he shouted
cut.
cut on Tarantino movie
The Tarantino movie.
because he noticed inconsistently in a shot that someone was holding a cup in the left hand on another right hand, like in the previous shot. That was hilarious. Uh, his stories are fascinating. I think Benji is one of the most talented people in the industry today or up to date. I think he has a wealth of experience also because of his background growing up in a Mormon faith.
Hmm.
So I loved hearing about that and how it affected his thinking and his personality and his future. And I'm really glad to see him thrive right now. He seems like a guy that really is incredibly passionate about what he's doing, really true to the art of what he's doing, and incredibly successful. Like he held the title of the modern swing, 22 times or something like that, some kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous amount of time. It's like, Benji, retire already. Give the young people, opportunity
It's
to shine.
it's got to be difficult to be in a competition and know you're up against Benji. It's got to be
Right.
demoralizing. Like it's got to like really hit you. The mental game has to kick in and go, this guy has won for 22 years or whatever, and
Right.
it's like, I feel like competitors feel that. There was a time in Irish step dancing where there was one particular girl who won, I think, 10 or 12 years in a row. She was always the world number one. And I remember I had worked with her, and then I got a chance to work with the world number two. And I remember when I started working with her, she didn't like number one. I'm not going to name any of the names in this podcast, but she didn't like number one. I said, "Why didn't you like her? She's like the nicest girl ever." And she said, "Well, when you go compete, when you're going to compete and you're up against her, you know you're going to be number two. Do you know how awful it is to be number two your whole career?" And I
Years,
just thought
years
that
and
was
years.
really
So,
interesting. The thing to think of was like, one thing I've noticed, which I think it doesn't really compare exactly to Danceology, but when I produced this tennis podcast called Beyond the Match, and I've noticed that the common thing that a lot of the athletes say is when you get into the top 50 in the world, you're all physically the same. What
yes,
separates number one from number 50 is the mental game. And
I
it's
think
really
so.
incredible to hear that like you've peaked physically, and there may be people on their way out with injuries, but for the most part, you're all very competitive in the top 50.
Yes.
And I interviewed Paulina yesterday for Quest for, this anniversary of 100 episodes. I wanted to have her back. And I asked her if that was the case in figure skating. If, you came down to the top 10 in the US, physically, are you all the same and it's a mental game? And she said, it's exactly it. You go up against people
I
that have won medals and championships, and the mental game will destroy you. You'll beat yourself before you ever get on the ice.
Right. I think it's a combination of a mental game and kind of, well, physically and skill wise. Like I even look at soccer players, and my son is into soccer, and dancers, obviously in ballroom dancing. If to an untrained eye, if you go to a ballroom competition to Blackpool, which is like the Wimbledon of ballroom dancing,
Right.
and you see that round where you have that 50 couples, I don't think that untrained eye would be able to say which couple is going to win. It is not that obvious at all. Um, and very often that couple that wins has been winning for years or seasons. I think it's the mental game, and it's also the adaptability. So here's the thing that happens when you win. Your confidence increases exponentially. So the people that win get better and better exponentially, and then people that lose, they lose the confidence, they lose the belief in themselves, and they try to fall back. So eventually, the people on the top do become better, and I would say the final often is significantly better, or you can at least recognize the superiority of the skill. At least that's what I see in the ballroom dancing. And I see that a little bit in soccer too. You have the stars. Why are they the stars? Like physically, they are not dominating. I mean, very often, look at Messi. He's not, Ronaldo is a specimen, absolute. He's like a Greek god that descended on earth and started playing football. Um, but a lot of these guys are very short, not incredibly physically impressive. Um, or at least the competitors are. And I think what differentiates them is that once you get to the top, and that's the mental game that they are winning in, they are able to use that confidence, and they are able to use that momentum to propel themselves to excel even further, to develop even further. And then they become stars beyond, anyone's reach.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned when you win something, you gain confidence. So you're
Yes.
inspired to go to your next competition, right? Is the repetition of confidence ego? When does ego kick in? When do you keep winning and you keep winning and you're like, I'm the shit now, And when does that start to happen? Because we've seen this happen in a lot of things. We see athletes with enormous egos. We see narcissism set in. When do you think there's that tipping point where it's like, they think they're the best in the world and they can't be beaten? And is that a healthy thing? Does that protect you? Do you go out as a narcissist and an egomaniac and you're going to win and you've sort of manifested the victory before you ever started playing? You know what I mean? I don't even know. Like, this is just an interesting theory on my part, but what do you think there's some truth to
Right.
that?
You know what? I think it's very individual actually for every person where that ego kicks in and where you thinks you're the best in the world and you're the god. And I think the trick is, and the greatest ones in any discipline are the ones that don't give in to it.
Mm.
When you look at Ronaldo and when you look at Messi, for example, these are the closest to me. We just had Euro Cup, right? Um, and I'm obviously interested in that because they're incredibly inspiring for my son. So I'm listening to what they say. They are both very humble, and Ronaldo is less humble than Messi, but he keeps repeating that how much work it takes, and that work doesn't stop. Even if you think you're the best in the world, you keep working.
Yeah.
And the same thing I heard about, I think Daniela was saying about her role model is Julia. Um, oh gosh, I don't remember her last name. She has a very difficult Zagarachenko or something like
Mm.
that. She was a world champion multiple times. She's retired right now. Everyone will know in the ballroom world if I say Julia. I didn't know her personally. I guess Daniela lived in New York and knew her better, maybe even trained with her. And she said the same thing. Julia was way beyond uh, anyone else's level, dance wise, at her time. And she kept working and developing her skill. So even it doesn't matter to me whether her ego would tell her, "Oh, I'm the best in the world right now." She just kept working. She never stopped. And I think the problem is when that ego um, changes your habits and changes your work ethic, and that's when people fail.
Did you ever come across any egomaniacs in the ballroom world? Were there just the nasty, black-hearted egomaniacs out there?
Well, you know what? I have faith in human beings. I always try to see the positive in everyone. But 100%, there are plenty of them.
Yeah.
100%, on the show, in the ballroom world. Um, but I must say that for most part, these people are incredibly gracious and nice people. I feel like, to be successful at something, there's so much sacrifice going into it, so
Hmm.
much work, so much self-discipline and consistency that these people, they understand what it takes, and they have, that self-awareness, and very often they are just humble and understanding. And maybe if they come across egotistic, it's every once in a while there is that little, that guy or that girl that just destroy everything. But I think across the board, to get to that level, you
Sure.
gotta have your head straight. You gotta have
Yeah.
everything organized, and you gotta be humble enough.
We had a great belly dancer, Janelle Lee, on the show. And we learned
Yeah,
that you can belly dance 9 months pregnant, pretty much.
incredible,
She was quite
incredible.
incredible, and she looked amazing on the show. Even how far along was she? She was pretty far into her pregnancy, and she was still
I believe
dancing.
so. She
Yeah.
was definitely in her third trimester, and she even had a performance a week from our podcast. I think she's terrific. I absolutely love her energy, and with her, I just love the sense of community that she created with her studio and with her dancing. I think women that come, mostly women, from what she said and from what I would assume, the women that come just have this sense of support and community. And I think that's and obviously the cultural background. Belly dancing is very tightly connected to the Eastern culture, Middle Eastern culture. So I think I love that sense, and I wished, actually, looking back, because this was already after the Israeli and Palestinian conflict has started. Well,
Hmm.
it started a long time ago, but after the
Yeah.
October 7th, I wish I actually talked to her about it. I know it would be a controversial topic, and at that point, it was one of our, I would say we were maybe in the middle of our interviews, or even one of our first ones,
She was
and I
our
didn't
third. She was our third
third. There you
interview.
go.
Yeah.
I did not feel confident enough to touch upon subjects that are outside of my competence circle. But I feel that these these subjects are so close to everyone. Everyone is affected by them. And I just wanted to have a conversation with her. And I know she's a supporter of Palestine. I wanted to hear her side of the story.
Yeah.
As you know, my husband is Jewish. And I obviously look with a great empathy at this conflict, and I'm against any war that's going on, whether it's Israel and Palestine or Ukraine. But and I try not to take sides, but it's hard not to take sides when half of your family comes from a certain background.
Yeah, for sure. We had Louis Van Amstel as a guest, and he was a great interview, and wow, he would get going, man.
Yes,
When he would get going, he
we
would
can
get
talk.
boisterous, and he would talk, and he got into. I didn't think we'd ever end the part about the Olympics, dance in the Olympics. He had a lot to say about it.
Oh gosh, he like threatened everyone who would
He
stop
did.
him
He
from
made a lot of
trying to
threats.
get dancing to
He made a
the
lot of threats.
Olympics.
But such a fun interview with him. He was a lot of fun. And we had Indiana Woodward, this incredible ballerina from the New York City Ballet. What did you think of Indiana? What did you think of her and what she had to say? Such a beautiful, graceful ballerina.
Beautiful and gracious. I love how she talked about the body image and the self confidence and all the issues that ballerinas deal with. As you know, I'm a huge admirer of ballet dancers. I think I told that to Indiana. I think their bodies are a work of art, and for me to look at her and uh, I know how much work and dedication it takes to develop the skill that she has. And to me, it's incredible. Um, so I just wanted to know how it's done and how she looks at herself and how she deals with the issues. Fun little things I learned are the hierarchy is the hierarchy in a typical ballet company. I had no idea about that. Um, so I'm learning and learning, and another thing is how do you sustain that career and how long this career can go on? What kind of other opportunities are out there? I know that Indiana has created like a workout um, program that is a ballet workout, which I love. But I just love to see how people get inventive with their careers um, how they have a bit of a business, throw a little bit of a business sense to it. I think
Sure.
that's a very important question that has to be asked to every dancer, because dancing is a career that ends very early.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly close to 35, 40, you're pretty much done. So what's after that? I loved hearing from Indiana what is her plan for the future, as well as other interviewees.
One thing I thought was really interesting with Indiana is she talked sort of about the ranking system of ballerinas, and I think in a lot of places that if I talk about other things like river dance, if Fergus hurt himself tomorrow, obviously all the other men in that show know everyone's roles, so someone can rotate in, right? And if you were on Broadway, there are apprentices for people, and
Right.
if you took an injury, you'd come in.
Understudies.
There are understudies, right? But there's actually sort of you sort of work up in a rank in the ballet. So you're just sort of in the core, and then you move up. You might be a soloist, and then you might be like. So I think it was really interesting to see how you would work up. And some of these people never make it out of the core,
Right, right.
and it's fascinating to see how that works and how many years that might take. And some of these people that lead the ABT and the New York City Ballet didn't really start to lead shows until they were 28 or 29 years old. And
Right.
Indiana was one of those that came in, later in her 20s before
Later.
she was really. And then some people come in and they're at 21, they're ready to lead shows,
Right.
which you see in Russia a
Well,
lot.
yeah. Well, I will tell you this. One of the things that is fascinating to me about the whole danceology idea is that I'm interviewing people that became successful at these disciplines, and I want to find out what makes them successful. What is that mix that allow them to propel and to reach the top of their craft? Now, people need to realize that there are thousands and thousands of dancers or professionals, ice skaters that have worked just as hard and have gotten to a certain level and were not able to jump over certain barrier and get to the top. And I want to know why this specific group did succeed and the other didn't. I think it's, first of all, it's incredibly inspirational. um, I'm interested in a topic because I have my kids, and even though I don't necessarily want them to become professional soccer players, professional dancers, I think it translates to life, how to be successful in life. Once you find out how to be successful at something, you can be successful at other things too. And that's why, the chances of my son becoming a pro soccer players are tiny, tiny, but I want him to give him his best shot. And I want him to be the best he can. And if he feels that he's the best in his region, the best on his team, or whatever it is, that will give him an incredible confidence, and will give him a lot of knowledge on how to become successful at other things.
Sure, sure. Rounding out some of our ballroom guests from the season, we had Dennis and Antonina were on the show. They were our first episode. We had Pasha and Daniela, which has been our most popular episode of the whole season. People love them. They were a great interview. And we had Anya Trebinskaya on the show. What are your takeaways from kind of seeing all your old friends come back on the show? How did you feel about it?
Well, as I said, it was so easy to talk to each one of them because we know each other. We have a long history. I've worked with each one of them multiple times. With Pasha and Daniela, the least. They were in my production. They are, I would say, a bit younger. They are the younger generation. They are on Dancing with the Stars right now. But I did have them in my production of Dancing Pros. So I got to work with them and got to see them up close. I think they are phenomenal. It was obviously nice to go down memory lane, um, but I think these people have a lot of knowledge and expertise to offer, and Dennis and Antonina are incredible in their craft, and they have taken a different route than Pasha and Daniela. And they are all incredible in their own right, and then they took a different path than Anna and than me myself, right? Um, so I just like to see the variety of where the same career of a ballroom dancer can take you. What are other opportunities out there, and also how people deal with the same issues. Like, we talk about judging in competitions. We talk about the schedule. We talk about the training. How do Dennis and Tania deal with that versus Pasha and Daniela?
Yeah.
What does Anna think about partnership and relationship? We talk also a lot about dancing in a couple, dancing with another person. Um, and Anna's perspective is completely different. Anna's danced with her husband. They later got a divorce. She danced with a guy who was an alcoholic. And then you have Pasha and Daniela that just had a beautiful daughter and live happily, just, living their life. Um, so it's kind of interesting to see all these stories and to see where the career can potentially take you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I love about Danceology as well, is just hearing everyone's stories. People are in similar disciplines with different variations in their stories and their lives and where it went. But that's what life is. You persevere and you have dedication to something and you move forward, obstacles or not. And that's what's great about it. We ended the season with Misha Garbett, the child prodigy. What did you think about talking to Misha? She's a lot of fun.
I can't believe she's 16. I just can't believe it. She's so young. Like 16, she's a baby. Um, when I look back where I was in my career at 16, I was literally a baby. Um, she is a ball of energy. She is this incredible personality. She's bright. She has a little sparkle in her that I absolutely love. She's a ray of sunshine. I think she has a lot of potential, and I think she's going to be incredibly successful in this business if she keeps going on this track. Because
Yeah.
as we know, things can happen. People lose interest, discipline, consistency. Sometimes the
They
ego
meet
kicks in.
boys.
Demi boys. And I with Misha, I loved hearing her story, and I also loved hearing how supportive her parents are. And she's at that generation that deals with the social media aspect that we didn't grow up with social media. We didn't have cell phones growing up. We didn't, well, iPhones, not even a cell phone. She's in that generation. I loved hearing how her parents are guiding and supporting her. And I think there was a lot of good advice to other parents out there. Um, but as I'm saying, she was just such a pleasure to talk to. You
Hmm.
just want to smile looking at her. I love that.
After we did the interview, I was flipping through, I don't know, Hulu or one of the streaming services, and I saw the Fast and the Furious Hobbs and Shaw movie. That spinoff they did with The Rock and Jason Statham
Okay. Yeah.
playing
Yeah.
their characters from Fast and the Furious, and
Yeah.
Misha's in that movie. So
Oh,
she
I don't know.
plays one of the adult characters younger. They'll do a flashback and they showed like her and her brother younger, like
Got it.
pulling little
Got it.
scams. So it was funny to
Hmm.
watch that and see her in that after we just interviewed her, and it was funny because she was so little. I mean, she was probably like 6 when she did it, so she was even
Right.
probably littler than she was in Matilda. It was one of her first roles, but it was cool. I mean, she had speaking lines, she had some action. It was a lot of fun to watch her in that, and it was funny.
Yeah, no,
So
it's incredible to see. I mean, kids at this age change so much. Like she's a completely different person than she was
yeah,
in Matilda too. Like at this age, every year, 2, 3, it's like you're not the same person.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so it will be interesting. That's the unknown to see what is she going to grow up to, who is she
Yeah.
going to become in the future. I think it's very fascinating.
There's great behind the scenes footage of Matilda out there. If anyone listening is a fan of that movie, go to YouTube, get on TikTok, and look up the behind the scenes because there were a lot of featurettes that were shot during that, showing how they made the movie and what went into the songs. And she's in so much. She's probably got more coverage in all the featurettes and the behind the scenes than she does in the actual movie. She's only actually in a few scenes in the movie, but they're important scenes in the movie. And and what was really cool was remember they shot that during COVID and lockdown.
Got it.
So
Mhm.
everyone's masked, but they had the school sets constructed out of wood, all the stairs, all the levels, and they had 100 kids that were doing all the choreography. So they would all that hallway stuff that she does, all of that dance, and how it goes through the whole school and out into the courtyard. They practiced all of that, drilled it over and over and over again. And it's so cool to watch them practicing that and how full out they went through the whole thing. The cameras following them down the hallways. There weren't a lot of cuts, lots of master shots to make it.
Nice.
Really, and they had people doing parkour, flipping off the walls, and like gymnastics are going. It was nuts that they could get 100 kids, preteens or
Coordinator.
whatever, to do all that. It was just a phenomenal. Like it really was very impressive for a musical dance film to see that what the kids went through to make that over and over and over again. Just the rehearsals, like it's really commendable that she had the discipline to be able to do that as a kid, because the kids have terribly
Yes.
bad attention spans. So to be able to be dedicated
Totally.
enough to be able to do that, and also
Yeah.
just the hijinks, off camera and behind the scenes, like the kids get anxious and they do like to control that world. And I
Right.
think you see that more in England. Like the kids in England are really disciplined, and you see that with the Harry Potter movies, that they're just kind of like, but American kids like run nuts when the camera's not rolling. Like they're disciplined on camera, and then they scatter and they do all their things. But British kids are like a different breed. I hope.
Yeah, no, there's something in the air,
Yeah.
huh?
She said in the podcast she wants to be in a Marvel movie or do stunts. That's what she
Yeah.
said she wants to do. But I hope that they come to America and they figure out how to get in the American system, because right now it's 80% unemployment in England right now. In all of Great Britain, there's just no entertainment going on there. It's tough, crew and cast wise. There's just nothing happening, and they don't know how to rebuild it. No one wants to shoot there. So
Well, there's probably some kind of regulation that's going on there that makes it too expensive or impossible to shoot. So someone needs to look at that as well. But yes, definitely, if that's the case, then they need to move here and give her a shot, because I think she would be phenomenal. She would be such a cute little character
yeah,
in
yeah.
superhero movie.
Well, Edyta, I enjoyed this trip down memory lane of our first season. I think we covered almost everybody that was a guest.
I think so.
If there was ever a good teaser or a preview of what you can expect, this was it. So go listen to Danceology and listen to these interviews, and everyone look forward to season 2, which I think we're going to start recording in August or September.
Very soon, yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna nail down the list soon. Get on it.
Yeah. As soon as the kids are back in school, we're we're back on it, right?
Absolutely.
Well, Edyta, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for coming out today and talking, and we'll let everyone know when the new season starts, and we'll catch up and talk more down the line.
Definitely. Thank you for having
Take
me.
care. Have a good day.
Metacortex Publishing hopes that you've enjoyed this presentation.
Please take a moment to listen to some other podcast offerings from Metacortex Publishing.
The Danceology podcast interviews the great masters of dance, the working professionals starring in today's most exciting shows, and the rising stars ready to amp up the craft. I'm your host, Edyta Sliwinska from Dancing with the Stars. Join me as I dive into the world of dance, uncovering unique stories and the fascinating personalities of industry professionals on Danceology.
Hi, I'm Father Daniel Duplantis, a Catholic priest, martial artist, and host of the Karate Priest podcast. Have you ever wondered what the church teaches about different topics? Are you a martial arts enthusiast or just someone who wants to learn more about martial arts? I'd like to invite you to join me and many guests on my podcast as we cover topics of faith, everyday living, and martial arts on the Karate Priest podcast.
The No Earthly Explanation podcast investigates the things that are unexplainable, hosted by world-renowned investigative researcher Donald R. Schmidt and scientist Ellie Ringo. Follow them as they look for evidence for things that have no earthly explanation. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Every year, tennis players from around the world compete for excellence, triumphing against all odds to emerge the champions. I'm your host, Maddie Harrison. Join me as I get up close and personal with these dynamic individuals and find out what it takes to go for greatness. Let's go beyond the match.
Cult Following is a podcast that studies the personalities and common traits of cult leaders and their followers. Get the real story behind these infamous and oftentimes tragic cults from a new perspective, through exhaustive research, and from interviews with people that were there. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hi everybody, I'm Amber Rose, the religious hippie, and I host the podcast A Catholic's Perspective. Join me every 2 weeks as I release episodes targeted towards helping young Catholics navigate their ever-changing secular world while staying strong in their faith. Whether you are a Catholic or not, all are welcome here. So if this is something that interests you, feel free to tune in. You can find A Catholic's Perspective on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I hope to see you there. Bye!
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fischer and Anthony Smith and is distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure to visit the official website for Metacortex Publishing at metacortexpublishing.com or find us on social media for other unique content.